Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining us here on Long Blue Leadership. Erin Staine-Pyne, class of 98. We're so excited for this conversation because, you've had such an amazing career, 3,500 hours in the C-17 and C-130 cockpits to wing commander, and now you're general manager of mobility at Merlin Labs. Just incredible.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we like to jump right in, and there's actually something that is probably unknown because you have done so many amazing things, and part of that comes with a story that's not always, rainbows and butterflies. And so back when you were a cadet, if you don't mind sharing this with us, I know you were wearing your soups pin, you were a captain of the soccer team, and you found yourself marching some tours.
Yes.
Do you mind sharing that story with us?
Yeah, no, I don't mind at all because it turned out to be a great leadership lesson in my life.
Excellent.
So, yeah, I was kind of at the top of my game, I felt like, in my senior year at the academy. We had a short break going in our soccer season. We had a weekend off, which was pretty rare. And the other captain and I were like, hey, let's get the girls together, right? We deserve to have a little bit of fun, take a little break. Like, what could we do to make that happen? And we decided, hey, let's rent a hotel room. We'll throw a little party. We'll have some friends over.
What cadets haven't done that?
Right, exactly. We'll be super responsible. We'll get the hotel room so nobody drives.
Yes.
We thought about taking care of each other. But as it turned out, we had a great night, a fun time, no harm, no foul. But later that week, we found out that one of the freshmen on our team turned us in for underage drinking. And that was a big, shocking moment in my senior year. So it turned into most of the team being restricted, marching tours, really having their reputation tarnished a bit. And even worse for us, maybe than that, was the season took a huge nosedive. We were in a really good place from a sport perspective, and we just couldn't get it back together after that happened. And for me, as I looked back on that event, I'm so thankful that it happened at the academy and not sometime later in my career, right? When I was in charge of young airmen. But I'm glad it happened at the academy, and I took a couple of really great lessons out of it.
That is quite a lesson. I mean, I'm just thinking about someone who is a high achiever, doing really well, has this reputation of, that's, like you said, untarnished. Let's just take a moment in that space, because there are experiences that all leaders have, I think, that are challenging in some way, that maybe is reputational. How do you navigate that? How did you carry yourself through that when it probably felt dark?
Yeah, it was a little bit bleak. I mean, my family knew about it, right? But to answer the question, I found myself taking ownership. Like, we made a really big mistake. I made a really big mistake as a leader. I took the team the wrong direction, right? And so I apologized. Like, I apologized to the commandant. I apologized to my coaches. I apologized to my teammates. I apologized to some of their parents too, right? That we saw later in the season. And so I think the biggest thing that you can do in that moment is go, I've really screwed up, and I'll take stock of that and change in the future. And then the other thing is you have to learn to forgive fast. Like, forgive yourself, right? I made a mistake. This isn't forever, right? It'll be something that I learn along the journey. But then also, for example, the freshman that turned us in, right? Like, that was a really emotional moment for the rest of the team.
And you all stayed on the team together?
We did for a while. She did end up leaving the academy eventually, which I'm disappointed about. Like, I kind of feel like that's a little bit of another leadership failure there. But I just think the thing I learned out of it later was you have to forgive quickly.
Wow. I mean, it seems so interesting that you had that kind of lesson so early. But I think one of the best things about the academy, it is really as a leadership lab, right? We talk about, being able to grow from learning lessons. How would you say your other cadets, outside of the bubble, right? The bubble being those who are in it with you, because I think in life in general, when things happen, you kind of have this other perspective of people who don't know what's going on. And so then they come up with their own perceptions and thoughts on that. How did you navigate that as a cadet in the cadet wing?
Yeah, I think it was trying at my first attempts at transparency.
Yes.
Like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, people would ask us, how much trouble are you guys in? And at first we'd be like, well, we don't really know. We don't know what this is going to turn out to look like. And then once we kind of got our punishment, 6 months of restriction, 100 tours, 100 confinements, but with the potential, at least for the seniors, to still graduate, we tried to share that with people too. Like, as if the leadership at the academy, still had some faith in us and thought we might still be able to graduate and be lieutenants someday. So, I would just say we tried some transparency, and there was also this kind of feeling of, I can't believe that your teammate did that.
Yeah.
And we tried to address that too, so it wouldn't come back, especially specifically on her,
right?
As she was the one at fault here,
right?
Like we were all at fault, not doing the right thing.
What a way to rise above, and I think really, what a beautiful story, because I think some lessons in there: transparency, making sure that it was a responsibility that everyone took on, and it wasn't starting to point fingers. Because I think it certainly is easy to try and push things away from ourselves, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that was quite a lesson. So you went on to graduate.
Yay.
Yes. And so did you always know you wanted to be a pilot?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Since I was really young, I knew I wanted to fly airplanes. My parents sent me to Space Academy when I was somewhere around 11 or 12. And I thought, I could be an astronaut someday. I want to fly the shuttle. And so that just sparked the interest. And my dad's a West Point grad. And so when I went to him and asked him, how do you become a pilot? He said, well, you go to the Air Force Academy, as if there was no other choice out there.
So did you not even apply to West Point?
I didn't.
Wow.
Much to his, I think I hurt his heart, but I didn't. He took me up there for a visit too.
Just in case you want to just see it.
Yeah.
Oh,
the Army has lots of pilots, but no, the Air Force Academy was my destination.
That is fascinating. So growing up, were you always someone that was a go-getter? Was this kind of ingrained in you because of your dad, the way he raised you, your mom? Like, let's talk about your family dynamic in that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. My dad, an Army officer. My mom, super hard worker, worked in the Senate for a long time as a press secretary. And they just, they were wonderful. I mean, I feel so lucky at the dynamic I had growing up. But I loved being a leader early. Like, I loved being in charge early. I could sense that about myself. Like, I wanted to be the person who helped others get to wherever they were going to. So, I sensed that early.
Oh gosh, that's fascinating. So you went to the Air Force Academy, you came out, you got to go, you got to fly. And you're living your dream. I'd like to fast forward a bit because in your leadership role, obviously, as a pilot, you were doing some amazing things, and we can certainly talk about that. But there was a period of time in which you were a wing commander.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, being a wing commander already is an amazing feat. But you were a wing commander during a time that I think was unprecedented in our country, COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an interesting time. I took the flag for at Joint Base Lewis McChord in early January. I assume this is 2020, early January 2020. And literally a month later, I was dealing with the first cases of COVID in the Seattle area. And so it went from being like, this is everything I've worked really hard for, and I am so excited to lead this amazing organization, to this, I have never done anything like this before. No one has, and no one really has a whole lot of advice on what we're going to do next. And we're going to have to figure this out.
So can you put it in perspective a little bit, just for us to understand, when you're a wing commander, like, how large is this wing, and kind of what are the responsibilities that you were having to oversee while you're navigating a medical crisis?
Yeah. So the wing is about 2,400 airmen.
Okay.
It's a C-17 wing. And so mobility operations never stop, right?
Yes.
24 hours a day, we're flying airplanes. I also had a clinic at the time, and then an airfield to run.
Okay.
Yeah. So a few things going on.
Just a couple.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So maybe let's talk about what that was like, because I imagine as a wing commander, while you do have a network in the way of working with your those that are supporting you and all the experts, it still can probably be a little bit lonely. How do you navigate that? How did you navigate that?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people say that, right? Leadership is lonely. And I think it is in the context that at the end of the day, you're the person who has to make those final tough decisions. No one else can make them for you, right? But the truth is you have the most amazing team around you, right? I had, during my time as a wing commander, 2 of the most amazing senior enlisted leaders, 2 chiefs. My group commanders, also colonels, were really, really incredible and experienced. And then the wing commander network is actually pretty powerful too. So you have peers that you've grown up with as squadron commanders who are now in charge of other wings, dealing with similar things. And so you lean into that too.
Well, we talk about networks in general. I mean, I think networks are so powerful, not even just in uniform, but outside of uniform. What was it like really trying to, I think, when I think about the airmen that you were, leading, they had their families and their own concerns as well. What was a challenging moment as a leader that you had to navigate, maybe where you weren't popular, or did you feel like you actually navigated in a space where everyone loved you?
No.
No.
I mean, unfortunately, at the end of the day, you do have to make some of those really tough decisions. And so for us at McCord, we were in the middle of the biggest movement of nuclear weapons in history. And so an incredibly important no-fail mission, right? And so my main focus was, how do I keep specifically my crews that are trained to carry nuclear weapons, how do I keep them healthy?
Right.
We don't have a lot of them. So if a couple of them get sick or something happens, then the mission really is at risk.
Right.
So I really was focused on how to keep them healthy. But I also was just broadly worried about my older civilians who might be more susceptible to either getting COVID or having a real impact from it. I was worried about my airmen who had family members who might be immune compromised.
Yes.
I was worried about airmen who might go home and take it to their parents or grandparents. So it wasn't quite as simple as, well, our airmen are young and healthy. It's a much more challenging problem than that. And so when COVID was really bad, kind of the fall going into Christmas of 2020, one of the things I had to do was decide, am I going to let my airmen travel? The Air Force would eventually take care of that decision for me. But when the airmen are here, can they get together and celebrate the holidays?
Right.
Are they going to have to spend Thanksgiving alone? What kind of tough decisions am I going to have to make here? And so, I probably made some pretty unpopular decisions, thinking at the time that I was protecting the mission. And the way I handled it was, it kind of goes back to one of those lessons I learned earlier, was transparency.
Yes.
We started doing things like Facebook Lives. We let people ask as many questions as they wanted to or were brave enough to.
Yes.
And tried to do our best to answer them. And we also tried to convey that we know we're not making perfect decisions right now.
Right.
Like we're learning to right now, and just tried to be very human about it.
What an amazing approach, a human approach. And I think what's so great about the way you did that was most people only see the struggle from their lens.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you're having to look at if I make this decision, what's the second, third, and fourth, effect that comes from that decision on a much broader scale. And so I think when you talked about the transparency, that is really powerful.
Yeah. Well, and it was a great way to get feedback too. I like some of my young airmen were struggling at the time. But actually it was some of my single officers even who, didn't quite have that family network around them where they were. And so we realized we had to pay attention to some other groups too, as we tried to think of ways to make sure we were taking care of the individual, but also the mission.
My goodness. I mean, I just think about it, the standpoint of the weight that you carried in that space. How did it impact you on the home front, right? So you're leading a wing, but you also have a family as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did that look like?
Yeah, it was a challenging time. I had a 2-year-old at home,
Yes.
right? And certainly at the beginning of COVID, we didn't know what the impact to kids was going to be. And so I was worried that she might be really vulnerable at that time. And my husband, who's also an academy grad,
Yes.
his parents were living with us at the time, helping with the baby. And his dad had cancer.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so we were incredibly concerned about even me going to work every day, and the possibility of bringing something back to the house was a huge challenge. There was a time where I would enter through the garage and like strip down, put new clothes on, or go straight to a shower.
Almost like a hazmat.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like,
yes.
I mean, it was a really interesting time at the beginning with so many unknowns.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think most people can understand when I said hazmat, like hazardous materials and clearing yourself from it. But in a way, that's kind of how COVID did impact us. Wow. When you were talking in those moments as almost it looks like a human and vulnerable leader in that approach, did you share like, look, I understand these things as well because I too have a family? Were those the ways you were explaining it?
Yes, absolutely. So anytime I got a chance to talk to airmen face to face, I would talk to them about how my focus is certainly accomplishing our mission, but my focus is on their health, their family's health. And this is how I'm thinking about it, right? I'm thinking about my own family and the different dynamics we have going on and how it might apply to them too. And I love the fact that before that, you would never have seen a wing commander doing something like a Facebook Live.
Right.
But that just became such an incredible tool for that exact reason.
Yes. So just thinking about the way you handled that, was there someone in your life, a mentor or someone that you saw kind of display those traits that you emulated, or were they just something that you innately had in you?
No, I'm sure I picked up on traits from multiple leaders that I had throughout my career. Colonel John Rakowski is probably one of my favorite mentors. He was a DO in my first squadron.
That's a director of operations,
Director of
right?
operations,
Yes,
thank you. In my first squadron, and later I would work for him as a staff officer at Air Mobility Command. And I watched him lead just with so much humility, very caring leadership style, and certainly a good communicator. And somebody like that is somebody you want to emulate in the future.
Absolutely. And if I recall correctly, he's the one I think that might have turned your eye open to this concept of Air Force Weapons School, right?
It's true.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because so for those listening and watching, I was not an aviator. I was a logistics officer. And so I think even the thought of weapons school to me is very much, a pilot and aviation focused opportunity. Can we just talk a little bit about that in general, just so that we all can learn more about weapons school?
Yeah. I mean, certainly the history of the weapons school is focused on fighter operations, right? The fighter pilot. Employing weapons, being a tactical expert, leading operations. That's how it started. But I think one of the best things the Air Force ever did was realize that in order to be successful in modern combat, you have to have a force that's integrated. So you need your intel officers to understand and provide information to the entire force. You need space officers who can employ space effects at the right time. You need more than just the person in the flight deck or cockpit who's employing the weapons. So they, somewhere in the 90s, right, we branched out. It started, certainly intel officers were part of it for a long time, but it branched out into the mobility communities. And then later you would see it branch out into the space communities too.
So it was early and not very long before this opportunity was presented to you. Let's talk about that, because I know you had your sights set on being a pilot. Were your sights set on weapons school?
Never.
Never.
No, well, I think I felt, at least at that point, I felt really young in my career still, right? I was an aircraft commander at the time. I wasn't an instructor in my weapons system yet. I wasn't an evaluator in my weapons system yet. And my director of operations came to me and said, "We want you to apply to weapons school." And I was like, I'm pretty young for that. And
it's very competitive, right?
It's very competitive. And the weapons officers in my squadron were like, they like walked on water.
Yes.
It seemed like,
yeah.
like they were so knowledgeable. So I hadn't really thought about it. Mostly in terms of time. Like it didn't seem like the right time for me.
So what made you say yes to apply?
Yeah, I think it was really two things. One was clearly my leadership believed in me. And that was hugely powerful, right?
Yes.
Somebody comes to you and says, no, we think you are ready for this. That was hugely powerful. And then the other thing is they also said to me, you would be the first woman to go through the C-130 program. We've never had a female graduate. And I said, well, that's ridiculous.
Yes.
Like, why is that still a barrier right now?
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, if not me, then who? Right? Like, who's going to be the next woman who might be interested in that opportunity? And so I kind of threw a little caution to the wind, I feel like, and said, okay, let's do this.
What is that experience like? Because I know what it's like to apply to the Air Force Academy. You know, and you have this the program you're going through when you're getting, you know, your weapon system that you're going to get in pilot training. What is it like, this application process for weapon school?
Yeah. So I remember you have to fill out a bunch of forms.
Okay. So that's pretty similar.
Yeah. Right. Like
you can practice in that.
Inundated with paperwork. You have
Yes.
to fill out a bunch of forms. But on the forms, you have to talk about your flying experience and all the things, you know, you have to have certain boxes checked, if you will. And so I remember filling out the form. They're like, you have to have 100 hours as an instructor pilot. And I'm like,
Whoop.
I don't have that, you know,
Yes.
but we'll plan to have accomplished prior to weapons school starting.
Right.
So yeah, I remember filling out the form and just being like, okay, this kind of confirms I'm not sure I'm ready for this, but it turned
obviously,
out okay.
yes. So how many people are, maybe the word is accepted into a weapons school class, and then how many typically graduate? Like, what's the attrition rate?
Yeah, so each platform is different in how many students they take.
Okay.
Typically in a C-130 class, you would have somewhere around 8 or 9 students.
Okay.
And you're probably going to lose perhaps one per class.
Okay.
So
yeah, when the numbers are that small to begin with, that's kind of significant.
It's significant.
Yes.
Yeah. If the class isn't making it through, every once in a while you'll lose 2. And that's that's a challenge. It's a challenge to run the program without enough students too. So
okay. So how long is that?
It's a 6-month program,
Okay.
or maybe 5.5 months approximately. So it's a pretty big chunk of your flying life to go to training for that long too.
Right. So let's talk about that, because there was probably some growth in yourself as a leader. One, feeling like you weren't actually ready. Then you were accepted. So then you were clearly ready, but you know, you're navigating it in almost in a first kind of capacity. What was it like growing as a leader in weapons school?
Yeah, it was just the perfect example of how obstacles can be opportunities, you know? And like, I talk to some of my younger airmen now, and I tell them, don't ever turn down an opportunity, because you never know when that opportunity is going to be the thing that really propels your career or changes what you're interested in or leads you down a really interesting path. And so I walked in the door, and I certainly was a little bit nervous and perhaps had a chip on my shoulder about being the first woman to go through the program.
Tell me what you mean by that, chip on your shoulder. Chip like you're like, why hasn't it happened yet? Or chip on like, I have something to prove?
Yeah, maybe I have something to prove,
okay.
you know, like that I'm good enough to be here.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
And what I learned, though, is as soon as the program started and I actually met the instructors and the people, you know, my classmates, the people that I'd be going through the program with, it was completely unnecessary. They wanted nothing more than me to be, you know, wildly successful in the program. And so it just turned out to be such an opportunity and such a great experience.
And I'm going to mention this because I'm sure that you won't. You ended up being the top graduate from your weapons school class. What did that look like through the program? You know, how did you earn that? And was it from different things you demonstrated as a leader? Like what brought that forth?
Yeah, I think certainly it's, especially in the Air Force flying communities, like you have to do the work yourself, right? It's hard work. You have to study. There's a lot of academics. But I think at the end of the day, what's really important is that you understand the team dynamics. You know, you're going through the weapons school with 8 or 9 other people. Are you the person who sits down and helps somebody out when you're good at something and they're not? Are you the person who recognizes what the other teammates are really good at and takes advantage of that?
Yes.
It's really about learning those individuals and building the team dynamics up that makes you successful in a program like that.
Erin, it's just, I'm just thinking back on all the things that you've shared with me, just in the way that you are such a team-minded person. You know, at the academy, you were the team captain. You know, at weapons school, you were, the distinguished graduate. Is that what they call them?
That's what they call it.
Distinguished
Yeah.
graduate, yes. And so, wing commander. I mean, I think there's this theme. What would you say is probably that most important characteristic that you carry then as a leader?
Yeah, it's, I feel like maybe this is a broken record with some other leaders, but I think it's empathy. I really do. I think one of the things I think about back to my Air Force Academy experience is, I had freshmen I was responsible for as a sophomore, or I had teammates I was responsible as a team captain. And did I really get to know them? Like, I knew them,
yes,
right?
Yes.
But did I really get to know them? Could I really walk in their shoes for a little bit and practice empathy for them? And so it took me a long time to learn like what a skill it is to be able to see something from somebody else's perspective and how you can use that when you're leading. But I'd say it now, it's a superpower.
Yes. When have you found in your career that that to be really challenging? Like knowing that's such an important fabric in being a leader, but also having to balance the mission, right? Like,
yeah.
When have you
sure.
seen that? Can you share a story or an example?
Yeah,
perhaps?
I really can. So, one of the things that was challenging at McCord was our tempo. Right, we were really busy, especially in certain mission areas, and so I could see the strain on some of my airmen. And the question is, how far can you push? Right? Like, how far can you push before it's too far and they really get unhealthy? And so I found myself, because I certainly feel empathetic towards them. I've been the person on the road all the time. I felt myself wanting to go to my MAGCOM and say, you guys have to slow down for us. Like, you have to give us a little bit less mission. And yet at the time they needed us to do more,
right.
And so really trying to get into the details about how much workload can we sustain, how can we find different ways to share the workload across the wing that maybe we haven't thought of before. I found myself trying to find alternate ways to balance those two things that were really at head with each other.
Was that something that you had the opportunity to talk through or work through with someone, or is this something that you really kind of just had to dig in internally and figure out?
Yeah, no, it's a perfect example of digging into the team, right?
Yeah,
Bringing the team back together. I had a great ops group commander who really understood the challenge. I had a planner who was the person who would really plan out the sortie pace, who really understood the challenge and had great contacts at Air Mobility Command. We would bring a Tiger team together to try to figure this out. And my job at that time was to give direction, remove obstacles out of the way, but then really let them at their expert level dig in and try to come up with some solutions.
Oh, that's fantastic. The team effort, everyone just kind of rallying around. So I'm curious on, because of the tempo of the roles you've had to be in and lead and experiences you've had, how has that impacted, your ability to be present with your family? How do you navigate that as a leader? Because I think that's something that leaders struggle with. Like, how far do I go myself? And where am I willing to, let things kind of go to the back burner?
Yeah, I think it's one of the hardest challenges out there, right? People talk about work-life balance. I'm probably of the ilk that I don't really think there's such a thing.
Right.
I think it's more of a sine wave curve where you pay attention to your career at those really critical times that you need to. And then when there's an opportunity to kind of pull the throttles back, you do it. And if you learn that early in your career, that there are those peaks and valleys, you can build a healthy career over time. So I would find that certainly anytime you're in a leadership position, right? Squadron commander, flight commander, wing commander, those are going to be the times when you're right at the top, and you've got to find ways to incorporate your family into the job is what I would tell you. And then the other times you can focus more on what they want to do. But yeah, when I was a commander, my husband was fully involved in the squadron.
Yes.
When I was a wing commander, I had a pack and play in my office, right, for my little one, because I wanted to make sure I got plenty of time with her too. And I would find ways to incorporate that too, right?
And you actually showed that human side in leadership.
Yeah. And I wanted my airmen to see it, to
Yes.
see that, I wasn't all the time Air Force Blue. We've got to go, go, go. No, I've got to find ways to make those both of those things work.
In all those times when you were leading others and, working in a partnership with Frank, your husband, and your family, when did you find time to take care of you? Like, what did that look like for you?
It was hard. It was hard. But I think what I did was I tried to find the things that gave me the most pleasure and prioritize those. So for me, it was, for example, I'm a soccer player, right?
Yes.
Anytime we were assigned to DC, I joined my indoor soccer team and played soccer on the weekends, or sometimes it was just curling up and reading a good book that had nothing to do with the military.
Yes.
Like finding some pleasure in the small things. I do think we scheduled, I never gave leave back. I think that's really important.
That is such an important
thing.
Yes.
I always took advantage of my leave, and I would plan big things for it too. Like, we're going to go to Hawaii, or we're going to go to Europe. We're going to do things and experience something else. So we have some of those really fun things to look back on too.
And when you took that leave, I'm curious, how did you navigate that space? As I'm a leader, am I reachable, or what does that look like when you're on vacation?
Yeah, I think you have to be reachable.
Yes.
I mean, unfortunately, sometimes there are just things that happen that you have to be reachable. But I think you also try to set an expectation that the person running your squadron or your wing or your, whatever organization it is, that they understand when those moments are. Like, you're not calling me for the small things.
Right.
You're calling me because something big has happened and it requires my attention.
Wow. No, that's perfect. So as I'm thinking about your career, what is probably had been the most maybe rewarding? I'll give you an option, either like the most rewarding experience you've had as a leader, or maybe the most challenging, because I think like those kind of, two ends of the spectrum really kind of forge us as leaders at times.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what the most rewarding is, because it's really fun. It actually still happens now.
Yes.
Is like the other day I got a note from one of my, he was a staff sergeant when he was in my squadron, and he reaches out to me, says he's retiring, and could I come to his retirement? And hey, you were the best squadron commander I ever had in my 20-year career. Something like a piece of feedback like that, like I could sustain on that for a really long time, that you made an impact in somebody's life, right?
Yes.
And they remember maybe some of the leadership traits you exemplified and used them themselves in their career. I just think that's like the full professional complete loop.
Wow, what a perfect way to take us here, because one of the things I like to ask all of my guests on Long Blue Leadership is, what is something you are doing every day to be better? I mean, you talked about, how you kind of lean into, those moments and really celebrate them and be reachable, et cetera. But I'm curious, what are you doing every day, Erin, to be better?
Yeah, I love this question, actually. So it made me reflect, am I doing something every day that will actually continue my own self-improvement? And I think the answer is yes. But to be honest, right now, it's really focused somewhat inward on my family.
Yes.
So I'm at that point in my career where I've spent a lot of time giving to the military, to the service, to whatever objective it was. And so today, I am trying to be the best mom that I possibly can every single day. So I'll read a blog, a book, I'll talk to other moms.
I love that.
Collaborate with her teachers. I'm really focused on trying to make sure I'm fully present as a mother since I have the opportunity because I was a little late to motherhood.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a beautiful way to fill your own cup, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, the other question we like to ask is if you could turn back time and talk to your young self, or maybe just if you're thinking about cadets and those who, cadet hopefuls coming up in today's day and age, what's something you would tell them to do now in the space they're in so they'll be better set up down the road?
Yeah, I would tell them not to self-limit. Like, if you think about something that you want to do in your career, or if you think about an idea that is possible, but maybe you think right now, nobody would support it or whatever, don't self-limit. Like, go after it. And be willing to take risks in that career space too. So there's so much that a single airman can do in this service. And there are senior leaders who want airmen who are kind of bold and willing to take risk and really reach their full potential. So yeah, don't self-limit.
What does that look like? Like, the idea of saying to myself, okay, like I'm just going to be really open to things, or how do you put that into practice?
Yeah, I think it means if you want to apply for a program and you're like, I'm not sure I'm going to get that, apply.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Apply. If you are worried about going to pilot training and washing out, don't be. Like, go through it. Again, the system is designed now to really help you get through those programs and those experiences. So don't rule anything out in your own mind before, let somebody else do the ruling out for you.
Thank you for I think just expanding on that, because, I think we can always look back, we're wiser and older now, right?
Yeah.
And understand that. But I think actually you made it so practical and actually how you really do live that way.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh gosh, Erin, I mean, this has been incredible. Has there been anything in your leadership journey that we haven't talked about that you would really love to share? Because I want to make sure we have that time with you.
Yeah. I mean, you've really hit some of the highlights for sure. I just, I've been so lucky to be part of so many great teams along the journey. And it's so interesting to see where you learn the biggest leadership lessons from. My opinion is it hasn't necessarily been from some of those big successes. It's definitely been from the failures along the way. And so I just, I think seeing failure as that opportunity is really important.
We talked about your cadet failure. Was there any other one in your, in your professional career post-graduation that you did see really shape you?
I'm sure there were.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, weapons school itself is a lesson in failing on a, 1 week you're completely failing. The instructors tell you how terrible you're doing. And the next week you're like crushing it.
Sounds like basic training a little bit, honestly.
It is a little bit, right? It's definitely emotional.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think there are lots of examples of, I know I didn't get it exactly right this time. And I'm just going to build on that for next time.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you. One of my favorite things about this time with you, Erin, is how you've navigated your career, but you've done it just even being in this room, like your smile, it just is effervescent. I have loved being in this room with you. Some of the lessons that I've taken away throughout this entire conversation, being transparent, being human, I've seen it in just the work that we do together here at the association and foundation. I'm looking forward to seeing it in this role that you're now with Merlin Labs. But I know you're going to be successful, and the people that will get to work with you will just be thrilled, and we'll grow from that too.
Yeah. Thanks, Navir. I love what you're doing with the Long Blue Leadership podcast, with all the association events. I really think you're helping to connect future leaders and current leaders. And I just think that's so important for what we're doing today. So thank you for what you're doing too.
Thank you. Well, I just taken it from some of the lessons you talked about, meet them where they are, right? So that's what we're doing. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today on Long Blue Leadership. Erin Staine-Pyne, class of 98, she trained me. So, I'm going to be good because of
we
that.
did a good job.
Yeah. But, the lessons permeate no matter where you are in your leadership career. Be human, be transparent, be present. And then remember that your career, I think how you said it kind of on these waves. And so, do what you need to do in the moment you need to do them. And I think as long as you take care of yourself and take care of your people, you're going to be successful. So thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Long Blue Leadership. Until next time, I'm Navir Walkowitz.
This Long Blue Leadership podcast conversation was recorded on Tuesday, March 17th, 2026.